My sister's fiancé spoke down to me at dinner, and everyone laughed. I didn't respond. Instead, I calmly took out my phone. His smile disappeared. My name is James. I'm 29, and if I had to summarize my family in one line, it would be this: appearance matters more than honesty. It sounds dramatic, but if you grew up with a mother who cared more about neighborhood opinions than your well-being, or a sister who was always defended no matter what she did, you'd understand. My family isn't abusive. They just perform constantly. Perfect smiles, carefully chosen phrases, holiday cards that look manufactured, but beneath it all, it's about ego, judgment, and maintaining an image. I've always been the odd one out. I was the quiet kid with big ideas who preferred building websites or tweaking Python scripts instead of chatting at church brunch. I earned a full scholarship in computer science and spent 5 years quietly working on a side project I never mentioned to anyone. Long story short, it took off after graduation, through a licensing deal, a modest exit, and some good investments. Nothing extravagant. No flashy cars, no luxury lifestyle. Just enough for me to freelance when I wanted, travel occasionally, and live quietly, which suited me perfectly. My family, however, still assumed I was trying to find direction. Even after I bought a home outright, my mother would say things like, "You'll discover your calling someday." And then there's my sister. Sophia is 31, a former beauty pageant regular who studied communications and married her college boyfriend at 26. The marriage ended last year because of what she called conflicting ambitions. She moved back home for a while, and that's when things got odd. Sophia launched into a full makeover. New hair, new wardrobe, a curated Instagram presence, and eventually, a new boyfriend. His name was Chad. Naturally, he looked exactly like someone named Chad would. Tall, tan, neatly groomed beard. The type of person who probably uses the term alpha energy, unironically. But here's the surprising part. My family adored him. My mother talked about him as if she were promoting him. "He's very successful in finance," she'd say, while sipping wine, though she clearly didn't understand what he actually did. My father, usually detached, nodded once and said, "He carries himself well." I met Chad briefly at my parents' house. Just a handshake and a casual, "Yo man, what's up?" I kept my distance. Something about him felt overly polished, almost rehearsed. When Sophia looked at him, it wasn't affection, it was performance, as if she wanted us to see her upgrading. I stayed quiet, smiled politely, and returned to my life. I assumed Chad would disappear quickly like her other phases. I was wrong. A week ago, I got a text from my mother. "Family dinner Sunday at 7 p.m. Be on time. Sophia is bringing Chad." No emojis, no warmth. Just an instruction. Typical. I thought about skipping. No one would miss me. But something about the tone bothered me. It felt less like an invitation and more like a requirement to help them maintain their perfect family image. Against my better judgment, I went. On Sunday, I showed up 10 minutes late just to throw off the mood. My mother opened the door, carefully made up, and looked me over like I'd walked in wearing rags. "James," she sighed. We were about to start. No hug, no greeting. I nodded and walked in. The table was set with crystal glasses, cloth napkins, and my mother's usual overcooked roast. Everyone was already seated. My dad at the head with a scotch, Sophia fully dressed up, and Chad lounging like he owned the room. "Yo, what's up, bro?" he said with an irritating grin. "Glad you finally made it." I smiled slightly. "Traffic," he snorted. "Sure. In this town?" My mother cleared her throat and signaled for me to sit, like a director urging the last actor on stage. We made small talk, work updates, weather, distant relatives. For a while, I hoped things wouldn't be too bad. Then, Chad started his story. He talked about a coworker who tried starting a side project, convinced he'd become the next Zuckerberg. According to Chad, the guy made about $7 and called himself an entrepreneur. Everyone laughed. My mother laughed the loudest. Sophia even wiped away a fake tear. I said nothing, but Chad watched me, waiting for a reaction. Ever try anything like that, James? I heard you're into tech. I shrugged. He smirked. You should talk to a guy I know. He teaches coding at a high school. Good job for people who can't get real development work. Everyone laughed. No one defended me. So I smiled at him and said, "Sounds like a solid backup plan for someone like you." His grin faltered, then returned. "Nah, man. I'm in finance. You know, real-world stuff." My father chuckled. "We could use more of that around here." That stung, even though it shouldn't have. I set up budgeting software for him last year and automated half his financial tasks. But apparently, Chad, the finance guy, was the real deal. I stayed quiet for the rest of dinner. Let them enjoy their little echo chamber. But my mind was active. I knew something none of them did. Something Chad probably hoped wouldn't come up. I had Googled him earlier in the week. Just a gut feeling. And what I found, let's just say his finance career was broader than he wanted people to believe. I didn't mention it. Not yet. After dessert, things shifted. But I'll get to that. You know the feeling when everyone is laughing at something you don't find funny? Not because you missed the joke, but because you are the joke. That was me, quietly eating dry roast beef while Chad acted like a motivational speaker giving a family TED Talk. Sophia watched him as if he were reading stock tips from above. My father leaned in with every word. My mother wore the same expression she used around wealthy country club acquaintances. I just observed, feeling like a witness to my own embarrassment. Chad pushed his plate away and said proudly, "Our firm's launching a new algorithmic fund next quarter. Cutting-edge stuff. You wouldn't believe how much back-end work I've been managing." "Back-end work?" I asked lightly. "Yes," he replied. "Predictive models, analytics, finance things." He laughed like he'd made a joke. "Sounds complex," I said. "It is," he replied. "Ever think about doing real business work? Or do you still imagine yourself coding in pajamas at 2 a.m. with a Red Bull?" Sophia laughed as if it were the funniest thing she'd ever heard. "Chad, stop," she said, clearly not meaning it. "James has always been more of a passion project guy." My mother didn't laugh. She gave me her tight-lipped look, the same expression that could silence a room. "We've talked about this," she said. "You need to let people joke with you. It's how we connect." "Joke or insult?" I asked. Her tone sharpened. "Don't start. Don't cause a scene." I'd heard that line my whole life. Translation: don't make us look bad. Don't break the illusion. I leaned back. I hadn't realized being mocked at dinner was considered bonding. Chad raised an eyebrow. "It's all in fun, man. No need to get defensive." I didn't respond. I just looked at him long enough to interrupt his confidence for a moment. My father stepped in to ease the tension. "Anyway, James, working on anything interesting these days?" He didn't care. It was just a tactic to shift the subject. I said I was working on a few projects, staying busy. Chad snorted, apparently his signature move. "What kind of projects? Or is that classified?" He wasn't blinking. He wanted to embarrass me again. Before I could answer, my mother sighed loudly. "Please, James, can we not do this tonight? You're making things uncomfortable." Everyone stared at me. I was the problem, not Chad, who'd been provoking me nonstop. Not Sophia, who encouraged it with every smile. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the same frustration from childhood, when Sophia acted out, and I got punished for not being the bigger person. The same feeling when I chose a college scholarship far away and my mother insisted I'd change my mind because I wouldn't want to leave the family. I clenched my jaw. "Sure," I said quietly. "Let's not make it awkward." The conversation shifted to vacations, neighbors, casual topics. I nodded when necessary, drank my water, and kept my face neutral. But inside, the frustration built. Not because of one comment, but because of years of being dismissed, ignored, told to shrink myself, told to maintain their image. And now there was a shiny new favorite at the table, someone who could say anything as long as he seemed impressive. Then came the moment. Dessert was finished. Store-bought cheesecake my mother pretended she baked. The wine had softened everyone. My father leaned back, content, and Sophia scrolled through her phone, showing Chad something on Instagram. Then Chad looked up and said, "I actually gave a fintech disruption talk last week. My team's partnering with a predictive analytics company. Startup Stream, I think. They're this small dev group no one's heard of. But their tech is solid. We're probably going to buy their platform soon." I set my drink down carefully and asked, "Startup Stream?" My tone was steady. "Yes," Chad replied. "Have you heard of them?" "What exactly is your role with them?" I asked. He grinned. "I'm the one who does the talking, front-facing. I handle the deals, make sure everything lines up. Some executives don't like working directly with the coders. It gets too technical." "The code people," I repeated flatly. "Yeah," he said, missing the tone completely. "No offense, but they're not really business-focused. They're smart, sure, but not built for the big table." "The big table," I echoed, feeling everyone's attention shift toward me. Sophia smiled uncertainly. My dad looked confused. My mom frowned, and Chad continued talking. "Anyway, we'll probably fold their tools into our system and maybe hire a couple of their developers. If they can keep up, it's a win-win." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" my mom asked, already sounding irritated. I ignored the question, opened my email, scrolled, and found what I needed. "Startup Stream," I said, "the predictive analytics startup your company wants to buy." Chad's eyebrows pulled together. "Yeah, so?" I held up my screen. "I own it!" The room went quiet, completely still. It felt like someone paused the scene. Chad's smile faded into confusion, then worry. My mom blinked. "What are you talking about?" I stood slowly, still calm. "Startup Stream is my company. I built it. Last year, I licensed our product to 5 hedge funds, including the one you work for. I met with your department heads 5 times. I didn't know your name because you weren't in any of those meetings." Chad looked pale. His mouth opened and closed without a word. Sophia looked like she'd witnessed an accident, and my dad straightened in his seat. "What?" he muttered. "I never brought it up because I knew exactly how it would go," I said. "Any time I tried to talk about something serious, you all treated it like a phase or a joke." My mom finally spoke. "You're telling me you own a tech company? Since when?" 4 years, I said. "You never said anything." "Would it have mattered?" I asked. "You made up your minds long ago." Chad stood up too, his earlier confidence replaced with nervous energy. "Look, man, I didn't know, okay?" "If you had," I cut in, "you wouldn't have said half the things you said tonight. Probably none of them." He glanced at Sophia for support, but she stared at the table. I looked around the room, the people who were supposed to be my family. When someone realizes the version of you they created doesn't match reality, it creates a specific kind of silence. What I saw wasn't reflection or regret. It was the moment their assumptions rewired themselves in real time. Chad's jaw tightened. My mom looked like she was rebooting. Sophia's face showed surprise, discomfort, and something close to shame. My father leaned back as if the foundation of his home had shifted. I stood there, pulse steady, not from pride or revenge, but from years of holding back. From always being treated like a kid on a laptop, instead of someone building something real. I could have gone further and spelled out everything Chad didn't know. How his company had been underbidding us for weeks. How he'd been left out of all key meetings. But something in me, maybe the part that used to want their approval, told me it wasn't worth it. So I said the one thing that shifted the room completely. I'm selling Startup Stream. The deal closes Friday. My mom gasped. You're what? It's been in progress for months. I signed the final documents last week. Sophia blinked. Wait, selling? For how much? I just looked at her, and that was enough. Chad made a strained sound. To who? I looked directly at him. Not your company. Then I left. No dessert, no goodbye. They stayed at the table like mannequins mid-conversation. That night, I barely slept. You'd think walking out would feel freeing, and it did. But there was something heavier underneath. I replayed their reactions, their silence, and the years I spent hiding my progress because I didn't. Arrogant. I never wanted to be the guy who acted superior, but they never held back from putting me down, and now I had nothing left to prove. Still, leaving doesn't erase the bruises. There were no texts or calls afterward, not even a passive-aggressive, "we need to talk." I expected guilt trips or attempts to pretend nothing happened, but there was only quiet. At first, the quiet felt peaceful, but disappointment has a way of making silence louder. I didn't fall apart, but I felt a kind of emptiness, like snapping a stretched rubber band and not knowing what to do with the slack. Selling the company, even with lawyers and advisors, felt like dismantling your own home. Pulling up floors, checking every corner, making sure nothing was rotting underneath. But it kept me focused. Then Friday came. I signed the final document at 9:42 a.m. and got the confirmation a minute later. Just like that, it was done. I stared at my laptop. My account balance didn't feel real. Enough zeros to impress any economics teacher. Enough to change my life many times over. Instead of celebrating, I closed the laptop and went for a walk. I ended up in a small coffee shop downtown, where I worked in college. The espresso was still burnt, and the table by the window still wobbled. I sat there for an hour, watching people pass by, wondering what came next. Then, Sophia texted, "Hey, are you around?" I considered deleting it, but curiosity won. "Yeah," I replied. She sent an address. Her apartment, not our parents' place. I fought it over, then paid for my coffee and walked there. She opened the door in sweatpants and a hoodie. No makeup, no act. Just my sister as I remembered her when we were kids eating cereal before school. She hesitated, then said quietly, "Do you want to come in?" I stepped inside. The place was small and cluttered, with half-open boxes and an abandoned wine glass on the counter. She motioned to the couch. "Look," she began. I didn't know about the company, about any of it. She kept fidgeting with her zipper. "Chad seemed solid after the divorce," she said, confident. I needed someone who understood me. "You mean," I said, raising an eyebrow, "someone to show off at dinner?" Her face went red. I didn't expect him to act like that, and I didn't expect you to drop a bomb like that either. "I didn't plan to," I said. But he kept pushing, and no one said anything. Sophia exhaled. "That's us, isn't it? We perform. We keep appearances. We don't cause trouble. Yeah, I said, and the boat's been sinking for years. She didn't speak for a moment. Mom's freaking out, she finally said. Not just about what happened, about what she missed. She called me yesterday, crying, saying she thinks she failed you somehow. I almost laughed. Now she notices. She's not good at apologizing, Sophia said. She thinks ignoring things makes them reset. That sounds familiar. I'm not asking you to forgive her, she added, but maybe talk to her. She's not sleeping. Dad's acting like everything's fine, but I heard him telling Uncle Ray that you embarrassed the family. I looked at her. I embarrassed the family? She nodded with a wince. That's the story they're choosing. Yeah, I said. Figures. We talked a bit longer. She apologized again, but this time it wasn't for show. It felt sincere, real, and unguarded. And I could feel myself softening a little, because, despite everything, she was still my sister. Maybe, just maybe, she had begun to see me as more than the family's easy target. I went, but made no commitments. I didn't text Mom. I didn't call Dad. Instead, I booked a trip, 2 full weeks with no laptop, no work, no family. Just me, a quiet cottage by the ocean, and enough free time to figure out what I actually wanted. And honestly, it was the best decision I've ever made. I hiked, I read, I cooked for myself. At night, I sat on the porch and listened to the wind. There were no expectations, no criticism, only silence. And slowly, piece by piece, something in me began to rebuild. Not through big declarations or inspirational quotes, just through being alone long enough to think about my next steps, not for status or approval, but for myself. In a way, I had already won, and my family didn't even realize I was playing a different game now. It was time to stop playing for them entirely. By the time I came back, I had a plan. Not for revenge or to prove anything, but for independence. But quiet never lasts. When I returned, a letter was waiting. No return address. Inside was a wedding invitation, Sophia and Chad, along with a handwritten note from my mother. We hope you'll come. Family is everything. Let's not let one dinner ruin that. I must have read it 5 times. Let's not let one dinner ruin that. As if it had been a small misunderstanding, something to slide under the rug with all the other things they preferred not to acknowledge. I held the invitation in one hand and the note in the other. For a moment, I just stood in the hallway, surrounded by a silence that felt loud. I wasn't angry. Not at first. What I felt was sharper, clearer. A realization that the people who should have known me best didn't know me at all. Family is everything. If that were true, maybe they should have started treating me like I mattered. I sat at the kitchen counter, opened the invitation again, and looked through the details. The wedding was 3 months away. Garden ceremony, formal dress code, dinner and dancing at a boutique hotel an hour and a half outside the city. RSVP by the end of the month. My name was written on the envelope in my mother's neat handwriting. It felt oddly personal, as if she hadn't ignored me for weeks after that dinner, and then resurfaced now that there were centerpieces to finalize. I put the invitation down and stared at the ceiling. Then I smiled, quietly, not smugly, because for the first time in a long time, I felt something new. Not resentment, not sadness, but leverage. They wanted me at the wedding, not because they missed me, not because they realized how poorly they'd treated me. They wanted the image, the illusion, the ability to tell people, yes, the whole family was there, James too. They wanted me to show up, dress well, smile, act like everything was fine, and keep their version of the story intact. I wasn't planning to give them that. Not freely. The next few days were the most productive I'd felt since the early startup stream years. Now, I don't know if it was clarity or just motivation, but every morning I woke up with direction. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing, organizing, and gathering information. I didn't trust Chad. That was obvious. But the way he stumbled through dinner and the way he tried to frame his connection to Startup Stream didn't sit right with me. So I started digging. At first, it was public stuff: LinkedIn, Twitter, old company pages. But Chad was more careful than I expected. His digital presence was clean, polished, curated. On paper, he looked impressive. But I'd been around tech long enough to know how easy it is to fake credibility if you know the right terminology. So I called someone, not exactly a friend, but a former colleague. Max, a cybersecurity expert I'd worked with a couple of years ago. He owed me a favor. "You want a background check on a finance guy?" He laughed. "I want to know who I'm dealing with," I said, "and I want it quiet." 2 days later, he sent me a file. It wasn't criminal, but it was revealing. Chad had switched jobs far more than my family realized. He jumped between companies, advisory roles, and consulting gigs, rarely staying anywhere longer than 6 months. He'd moved up not because of skill, but because of personality and networking. He wasn't in senior management at his current fintech company. He was in sales, not strategy, not analytics. Not unethical, but it made everything he'd bragged about at dinner sound much less solid. Worse, he had a pattern of poor investments: real estate, crypto, a handful of e-commerce projects that never progressed past the initial launch. He wasn't broke, but he also wasn't the successful CEO he pretended to be. That explained a lot. I saved the information. Next step? Allies. I wasn't planning to go all out, yet, but I wanted options, so I called Lily. She was technically my ex, sort of. We dated casually during the early startup stream era, stayed friends. And she always had a good instinct for people. She had also been at that dinner a year ago when Sophia brought her last boyfriend for approval. Lily had noticed the same things I had: the superficial confidence, the insecurity underneath. She'd even predicted the relationship wouldn't last, and she was right. When I told her about Chad, she didn't hesitate. "I'm in," she said. "Whatever you need." "You might regret that," I warned. "I won't," she replied. "Besides, I still owe your sister for that passive-aggressive meltdown she had at brunch." Fair. Later that week, we met at a coffee shop to discuss next steps. "So what's the plan?" she asked, sipping her iced latte. "Expose him mid-ceremony? Big dramatic reveal? Hidden cameras?" "Not yet," I said. "Nothing dramatic. I want to understand the situation first. I think he's using my sister. Maybe for money, maybe for status. I'm not sure, but something's not right." Lily nodded. "You think she knows?" "She's too focused on the appearance of winning to see it." "And your mom," I said with a small smile. "She'll ignore anything that threatens the image." Lily leaned forward. "Then let's give them exactly what they want: a flawless, peaceful wedding with you right in the middle of it." I paused. "You think I should go?" "I think you should RSVP yes," she said. "And while you're posing for the photos, we quietly start building the foundation. If Chad is hiding something, we'll uncover it. And if he isn't, we stay respectful. But if he is..." She let the sentence trail off. I nodded. "All right, let's do it." That night, I submitted my RSVP. No one texted me, but I knew they saw it. The next 3 weeks were focused on preparation. I reached out to people, spoke to shared contacts, slipped quietly into the online spaces Chad interacted in, and watched. Lily helped review his social media, spotting unusual patterns, odd timelines, trips that didn't align, and comments hinting at side ventures he never publicly mentioned. Then one night, Lily sent me a message saying she'd found something. I opened the link. It was a thread on a niche financial forum buried under layers of SEO clutter. Chad had been posting under a pseudonym, but not very effectively. He was promoting a crypto-based investment platform that was incomplete, full of jargon, and clearly illegal. The thread was packed with warning signs, promises of guaranteed returns, aggressive sales language, and replies from people claiming they never got their money back. It wasn't a definitive smoking gun, but there was enough smoke to raise concern. I forwarded the thread to Max. 2 days later, he confirmed it. Chad had quietly established a shell company 6 months earlier. He had been funneling money into it from his personal accounts and possibly from friends and family, likely promising high returns on a product that didn't truly exist. That's when it became clear this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protection. My sister was preparing to marry someone who might be running a small-scale scam. She didn't know. My parents were planning a wedding that could end in legal trouble or financial fallout, and no one else was willing to face it. So I made a decision. I wouldn't stop the wedding. Not yet. But I would be ready. Because when they asked me to smile for the pictures, I wanted everything set. The wedding day came like the final act of a show everyone rehearsed but never fully understood. The venue looked exactly how I imagined, tastefully extravagant. White flowers lined the archways, and teenagers in stiff suits handed out gold-trimmed programs. A jazz trio played near the garden entrance, while guests drifted around with champagne. Their conversations about as deep as the decorative koi pond nearby. I arrived in a matte charcoal rental car. Clean, simple, professional. Ava stepped out beside me in a dark green dress that made at least 3 of my mother's friends stop mid-sentence. She linked her arm with mine. "Ready?" she asked. I didn't answer immediately. I looked across the lawn at Chad greeting guests with rehearsed warmth. My mother barked instructions at the coordinator with the precision of someone managing an event, not a moment. And Sophia, beautiful in an ivory lace gown, polished makeup, and her practiced pageant smile, stood like a display piece no one wanted to disturb. Then I nodded. "Yeah, let's finish this." The ceremony was set for 4 p.m., just as the sunlight created that golden glow ideal for photos. Everyone dressed up and most looked the part. I recognized neighbors, friends of the family, and distant cousins likely attending for the food and socializing. Before the ceremony, I kept to the edges, sipping water and watching Chad cycle through his charm routine. He joked, flattered, and impressed people without offering any real detail. If you weren't paying attention, you'd think he was the perfect groom. But I was paying attention, and so was Ava. She nudged me around 3:30. "He's still working, everyone. You sure we wait until after?" "Yes," I said. "Let the picture form completely." We sat in the second row, behind immediate family. My mother gave me a stiff smile. My father managed a small nod. Sophia didn't look at me as she walked down the aisle. Her jaw was tight, not from nerves, but from pressure. Chad looked confident, polished, and entirely self-assured. The ceremony was short, mostly filler, a few tears from my aunt, and vows that sounded suspiciously like they'd been written by software. Then came the reception, the real presentation. Tables with personalized place cards, a choreographed first dance, and a menu so specific it mentioned the farm where the chicken was raised. My mother gave a toast about love and building a future. My father followed with an awkward but heartfelt welcome to the family. I watched and waited. When dessert arrived and the room relaxed, I stood. "May I say a few words?" I asked, tapping my glass. The room quieted. The MC looked to my mother, who froze. Chad smiled widely. "Of course, man. Go ahead." I walked to the microphone. "Thank you. I'll keep this brief. I just want to say how happy I am for my sister. Sophia, you look wonderful. You've always been one of the strongest people I know." She blinked, unsure of what was coming. I looked at Chad. "And Chad, I'll be honest, I wasn't sure about you at first. So over the last few weeks, I did some research, looked into your background, your investments, your side ventures. It was informative." The room shifted. Conversations stopped. Chad straightened. "What are you?" I lifted a hand. "It's all right. I'm not here to ruin anything. I'm here to share the truth." I connected my phone to the projector, the one set up for the slideshow. The screen lit up, showing a browser window. I opened a PDF titled Investor Communication Records. Credence Coin, 2021 to 2023. Another file showed screenshots of Chad's forum posts under his alias. Then, a short clip of a Zoom pitch where he guaranteed profits to unsuspecting investors. I let it play for about 20 seconds before pausing. "For the last 2 years," I said calmly, "Chad has been running a small but harmful Ponzi-style operation. Not large enough for headlines, but large enough to hurt people. Friends, family, anyone who trusted the pitch." Murmurs spread. Faces tightened. My uncle said something under his breath. My father went pale. Sophia clutched her bouquet. "James, what is this?" she asked, her voice strained. "It's what I tried to tell you," I said quietly. "He's not who he pretends to be. I wanted to warn you earlier, but I needed evidence." Chad stepped forward. "You little—" I held up another paper. "This has already been sent to the SEC. What you're seeing now is simply a courtesy." His face drained of color. "But you know what's worse?" I continued, turning back toward the room. "It's not the fraud. It's that no one in this family believed I might be right, that I might have value beyond staying quiet." I looked at my mother. Her hands shook around her glass. "Today, I chose not to stay quiet. Today, I chose honesty over convenience." I stepped away from the mic. Chad didn't move. Sophia looked completely shaken. The coordinator hovered silently at the edge of the room. Then everything unfolded. My mother stood. "James, we need to talk." "I'm done talking," I said. "You only listen when it suits you." Sophia whispered, "James, wait. Why now?" I turned to her. "Because you deserved better, even if you couldn't see it." Then I walked out. Ava followed. We didn't speak until we reached the car. "Do you feel better?" she finally asked. I took a long breath. The air outside was cool and still. "I feel free." We drove off. Later, I learned Chad was taken in for questioning that same week. The SEC had already been investigating him. My submission simply completed the file. Sophia ended the marriage within a month. My parents stayed silent for a while, until a plain card arrived in the mail, blank inside. I threw it away. Not every ending needs closure. Some endings are simple, like the sound of a door closing behind you. Sometimes, quiet is the strongest kind of victory.